This video I'm going to show you the Raritan mass deployment utility. You can get the Raritan mass deployment utility from the GitHub URL that's currently shown on the screen at the moment. So let's just dive straight in. I've got my utility code and an example file to get us started in the left-hand box. On the right-hand side, I've got a USB key mounted up as drive E, currently empty. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the mass deploy utility. It's a Python 3 script onto the E drive, and I'm also going to copy a mass deploy.txt file, which is the main configuration file. So if we go over here, we've got those two files there. So let's have a look in Notepad at mass deploy.txt. Now the file is split into three sections. Each section is separated by these special section separation lines, which is just 2% characters on their own. So this is the first section. When the utility runs, all the lines in the first section get copied to a file called fwupdate.cfg. The lines in the second section or middle section, these get copied to a file called devices.csv. And the lines in the third section, these ones, will get copied to a file called config.txt. Let's see that in action. All I need to do is type Python mass deploy.py. The script runs, and if I now look, I've got these three files. And if we just look at them very quickly, so firmware update.cfg has got the first section, devices.csv has got the middle section, and config.txt has got the third section. So we can see this is just a way to manage the configuration in one file, have a utility that splits it down to three files. In itself, that's not particularly impressive, but it does allow us to do some quite handy things. So for example, we can introduce comments into the configuration file. So I might want to say that these are PDUs in data hall 7, floor 2. I might want to say that this is version 2 of this file, and maybe put today's date in. Now lines that begin with this comment character, the hash character, won't end up in the config file. So if I save this, run the configuration utility again, and this time where we might have been, if we look at what's in fwupdate.cfg, it's just those lines. The comment lines haven't gone through. So this is handy to document your configuration. Another handy feature is, say we've already configured the first PDU and we don't want that PDU to be touched in any future configurations, we could just comment out that one PDU. Let's run again. And now if we look at config.txt, sorry, devices.csv, we can see that the first PDU, one with IP address ending .20, isn't in there. We've now just got the 9 PDUs in there. So comments are a handy thing. Let's just uncomment that, put that back in. Now, if you've ever done any Raritan configurations like this, you'll know that you have this funny sort of dollar open brace, close brace notation here. So that notation there means refer to the third column in the devices part of the file, so the PDU name. And similarly, we've got a reference to the fourth column and the fifth column for the IP address and the subnet, respectively. Now, wouldn't it be nice if we could, in our config section, have something a little bit more explanatory? So instead of having numbers, we could have names. Well, we can. All we need to do is put those changes that I've just done there, and then we just need to put a line that names these columns. So I'm going to just put some titles here. So if we do this, again, run the deployment script. Now we'll just check that everything is in order. That's okay. The devices, we've got I've uncommented the device, so we've got the full 10 devices in there. And look what's happened in the config.txt now. The utility has worked out how to change these numbers. Now this is handy because if you introduce new columns or change the order of the columns in the devices part, if you reference them by number, you might need to change the numbers, and that could easily let errors creep in. By using names in this fashion, it's that little bit harder for errors to creep in. Right, now there's something else that we can do. I'm just going to copy something into my clipboard, edit, copy. Now what I'm going to do, I'll just paste those changes in. I'm going to replace all this stuff here, all these net.interfaces, that's all quite sort of, I mean, pdu.name is quite easy to remember, but it's a little harder to remember that you need net.interfaces, ip.config, methods. That's all a little bit difficult to remember. So the configuration utility understands these shorthands, what I've called @@ macros. And whenever you see a sequence of 2 @ signs, a name followed by another 2 @ signs, it will look at the name, and if it's pdu name, it will change that to pdu.name. If it's IP4 enabled, it will change it to the longer form. So again, let's just save this configuration. Run the mass deployment utility again. And actually, we're not going to see any big difference, but the firmware update configuration, that's remained the same throughout the entire demo. The devices are still there. Notice in the devices file that the devices file doesn't have that first line of headings. They're actually taken out. And finally, if we look at the config.txt, not only have the column numbers been put in properly, but also these nice little macros have been expanded out. So that makes it nice and easy. I've now got on here, oh, that's just another thing. See all these 00, 0s, 001s? Every time the utility runs, if it finds if the file already exists, it will take a backup of it. So that maintains a nice little history of the changes which you've made. So if you made a change and then you think, oh, I didn't want to do that, and you want to go back, at least you've got these other files to go back and look at and see and revert to an old version if you need to. So that USB key there now is now ready. We can eject that, and go and plug it into a PDU. If you wanted to obviously copy these files onto a second or third or fourth USB key, just whack in the key and copy them over. So the good news is this utility is available for you on GitHub. There's a nice README that basically goes through what I've said on this demo, just to remind you if you prefer to read about things rather than watch videos. But apart from that, thank you very much once again for listening. My contact details are up on the screen. If you have any questions, I'd love to hear from you. Thank you.